Today's Red Dane top tip is on post-weaning. So a lot of farmers pay good attention and have some of their top people looking after the calves up until weaning, but then we find often they neglect the calves. They think, okay, they're off milk, off they go on their own, and put them in a big paddock, and a lot of the gains you've achieved during calf rearing are then lost. So some of the tips that we recommend is make sure that when you're weaning at about 2 months, or when around that stage, depending on your system, make sure that they have reached the required target before you cut off the milk. And our target is at least 90 kgs at 2 months, or more importantly, we want to see a gain of no less than 600 grams, preferably closer to 700 grams during the rearing period. We then also make sure that their meal intakes, so we've been giving them meals since birth. Critical that you don't wean them until they're getting at least 2 kgs of meal into each calf per day. You know then the rumen's working. You can see these aren't pot-bellied, which means they're digesting the meal well and they are ready for weaning. So in other words, do a pre-weaning inspection, checking that they have reached target and that they're eating at least their 2 kgs of meal. So these calves are ready for weaning. We're happy they've reached their targets. We've made sure they're eating their 2 kgs of meal, and we then we actually take them away from this area and put them into another Mars pen where they are not close to the calves that are getting milk, because otherwise they get stressed when they see the other calves being fed milk, and obviously they'll be very unhappy. So we move them to another area where they're still in Mars pens, so they've had a little stress of stopping milk, but they're already on meal there, so the meal introduction has happened and they're still in Mars pens, so you've only really shocked them with one change at a time. Okay, so here we have the post-wean calves, so you can see they're doing really well in these Mars pens. These are some of our bit simpler Mars pens where we don't have the tarpaulins. We've got just open, but they've still got the shade, so again a transition from being in a completely closed area to at least having shade and still being protected in a Mars pen. Very important not to overstock when you get to this stage. 8 would be an absolute maximum, whereas pre-weaning we're happy with 10 calves, so reduce it down to 8 if you're going to have post-weaning Mars pens. It's also important to note that at this stage they're on calf grower rather than starter. We transition them to the grower meal about 4 weeks before weaning, so that's one more transition that's happened before weaning. Again, trying to keep the changes to one at a time and spacing them out. Very important that you move, if you're going to use post-weaning Mars pens, you move them a lot. You can see this, they're due to be moved now, and it's got quite muddy. You can see the area behind, so you want to be moving them at least 3 times a day, 4 times if you can. It actually is very good for transforming bush. If you've got areas of rough grass, you can use these Mars pens at this stage, take the calves over, and you'll find whatever grass you've got there changes generally and becomes star grass because of the heavy stocking density that these Mars pens provide. Okay, so another thing at this stage for us, they're now strong, healthy, and you need to start thinking about the vaccination program for your farm. We tend to, all the vaccines or diseases we feel the calves need protection against, we vaccinate to the mothers, so it's passed on in the colostrum. But these calves now, that immunity will be wearing off. You need to start looking at your BVD, IBR, CA, the contagious abortion, leptospirosis, so on. Those diseases need to be done. We need to start protecting them against that at this 3.5 to 4 month stage. So we start their vaccinations, their first one, and then their boosters later when they're about to leave this group. We actually do them a week before leaving the Mars pen, so we can still keep an eye that they haven't had any adverse effects. So following the Mars pens, or the second Mars pens, we then put them into smaller paddocks now. Again, we check they've reached their targets, they're at least 120 kgs, they're eating enough, they've grown well. This is where we now start to introduce some TMR, so some silage, some hay. We stagger it, so starting off first with 25% TMR, 75% meal, for I think it's a month, and then when we feel they're eating that well and they're not getting pot-bellied, digesting well, we then move up to 50% for a while and eventually to the full TMR. So that now completes your post-weaning management. Your calves are now 6 months old, healthy, running around in bigger paddocks. You then now need to set your targets towards breeding, making sure that they keep their gains. Again, don't ignore them from this stage. They still need to be achieving their 600 to 700 grams, and you want to get them ready for breeding at the 14 months of age.